because none of us changes. We just become more like ourselves. You become better, I guess, at things perhaps, unless something dramatic happens to change your course of your life. If you are that person who has changed, and even if you haven't changed in exactly the same ways, but you've changed in little ways, perhaps you can see the ability in people to change. And if you can see the ability in people to change because you've changed, then maybe you put that onto people. In other words, are you the kind of person who sees the best in people? Not that you see them as they actually are, not that you're particularly forgiving of them, but you sit there and say, yeah, you're a real piece of shit, but you know what? I see something else inside you. I think you're capable of a lot more. Not just like blind hope or blind optimism, but just little like flashes of it. I don't know. What do you need to get there? Someone to believe in you, perhaps? And I believe in you. I mean that really, not like, I believe in you. No, why? Because some of you are incredibly clever and witty. And that means that there's something inside of you that means intelligence. And if there's intelligence, then that means that there's a way of figuring things out. And if you can figure things out, then that hopefully means that you can see problems before they develop, and you'll realize that getting an education is the thing that's going to save your life. And I mean that quite literally, save your life, not just in some hyperbolic metaphorical sense, but it will save your life. It will retrieve your life from the garbage pail where most people's lives end up, living lives of absolute quiet desperation. And there's something to what you're saying there. But it's being implied here that when you're called the bad guy without, when you're being wrongly thought of as being a bad person. And when oftentimes, again, going back to that, oftentimes we think of a person as being a bad person just because we just don't like them. Like somebody breaks up with you, and so you start finding all of these things that are wrong with that person. And especially, I mean, that's not what friends are for, oftentimes, to point out all the terrible things about the other person. Because when you talk to your friends about significant others, or when your friends talk to you about their significant others, what do we largely hear about, if not the negative stuff? Oh, they do this wrong, or they do that wrong, or there are these little things that that the other person will do wrong, that they're just little things at the time, but after you split up, now we're all about, oh my God, it was this huge red flag. How come I didn't see it before? They don't like tomatoes. Or something stupid like that. There'll be like this little thing, and all of a sudden we'll make it into this big, huge, giant thing. Was anything wrong at the time? Apparently not. Apparently it didn't bother them at the time. But suddenly afterwards it becomes this huge thing. But I wonder how many of you have been in this position before, where you've been considered the bad person for something you didn't even do. I tell this funny story that, God, it was years ago now. I was up in my old room 219, and my students went out on a hall pass or something like that. They came back and they had a bunch of Diet Coke with them, a case of Diet Coke, the cans. And they gave it to me, and I asked them, where'd you guys get this? And they're like, we just got it for you. I'm like, where? And they were like, doesn't matter, we got it for you. I go, wait, did you guys steal someone's Diet Coke? You can't just steal Diet Coke and then give it to me. Turns out they ended up telling me that they stole it from the teacher lounge. It was in the refrigerator. Someone had Diet Coke in the refrigerator, so they stole it from them. And I was like, oh, dude, you can't just do that. That's somebody's Diet Coke. And they were like, all heartbroken. They were like, yeah, but we did mischief. Like, mischief is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So they were, we did mischief. We brought this to you. And then the bell rings to go off to nutrition break. I'm like, I got to put this back. So I take the Diet Coke. I'm walking out of my room to walk down the hallway to put it back. And just as I'm doing that, I hear someone say, hey, Scanlon, you gonna pay for those Diet Cokes? Any of you guys know Ms. Garcia? Yeah, if any of you guys know Ms. Garcia, she loves Diet Coke. It was her Diet Coke that they had stolen. I didn't know whose it was. I like Ms. Garcia. So I was on my way back to it, and I stopped, and I started to try to explain myself, and then I started laughing as I'm trying to explain myself, because I realized that I did nothing wrong. In fact, I was doing the right thing by returning this, but who the hell's ever going to believe that I was doing the right thing? My reputation being what it is, does anybody believe I had nothing to do with that? I didn't tell students to steal it. I didn't, encourage mischief. There's no way anyone's ever going to believe it. and I really didn't do anything wrong. I wonder if you've ever been in that position before, where your reputation is just such that people will believe the absolute worst about you. If any of you guys, I don't know if you guys came in on a Monday and you heard that I had hijacked a busload of orphans and ran them into a river and killed them all. Would any of you guys doubt I did that? Probably not. I would never do that. But then again, wouldn't I say that? I mean, who would just tell you I would do that? But it sounds like something who would do it would say. I wouldn't do that. But think about that. If you know somebody who just has that kind of a reputation for mischief or doing bad stuff, there's almost nothing you wouldn't believe about them. And so this is one of those reasons that something, if anybody ever says that you did something terrible, you got into trouble or whatever, and you told me, oh, it's Galen, they said I did such and such, I'm that guy who'd be like, I hear you, man. You know, and then you might be like, I didn't do it. Okay. Even if you told me, yeah, I kind of did it, answer's the same. Okay, I get it, because I've been there on both ends of it. People will accuse you of doing stuff all the time, and of course, the more you do, the more that you get accused of. And it's, you know, how do you walk back from that? It's like, you're already the person who did this. You're already the person who did that. Wouldn't they believe anything at all about you? Going back to a conversation I was talking with somebody recently about, there's a guy who, it's this girl I know who has an ex-boyfriend. And they were talking, and he found out that his current girlfriend had cheated on him. And he was trying really hard to, like, you know, keep it together, and they were up to like 2 a.m. talking about it. But he wasn't a great dude before that, so it's kind of like, do you believe that happened? Do you think that it was the first time he had done it? You know? But if you've been in that situation before where you've been accused of things before that you didn't do, maybe there's a little bit of empathy, but if they've done it before, wouldn't it always stand out to that's the kind of person who will do it again and again and again and again? Because none of us changes. We just become more like ourselves. You become better, I guess, at things, perhaps, unless something dramatic happens to change your course of your life. But, I mean, especially, let's face it, especially when you're younger, how many things have happened in your life that will dramatically change the course of your life already? Probably not many yet. Because in order to change it, you had to have a reason to, which would mean giving you a cause to think about it. You know, you get caught, what do? I get better at it usually, most people. Or change would be the best way to go. But and you develop a heart for bad people, especially if you've been one. Either because you've been accused of it before, you've been wrongly thought of as being bad, or, going back to what I was just saying, if you actually are that person who's changed. And if you are that person who has changed, and even if you haven't changed in exactly the same ways, but you've changed in little ways, perhaps you can see the ability in people to change. And if you can see the ability in people to change because you've changed, then maybe you put that onto people. In other words, are you the kind of person who sees the best in people? Not that you see them as they actually are, not that you're particularly forgiving of them, but you sit there and say, yeah, you're a real piece of shit, but you know what? I see something else inside you. I think you're capable of a lot more. Not just like blind hope or blind optimism, but just little like flashes of it. It's one of those things that as a teacher you really develop, especially teaching 10th grade. Especially teaching 10th grade, man, because if you guys ever go to the assemblies, you'll see, just look at the walls of the indoor assembly, you'll see like 9th graders, you know, on the wall. And you'll see 10th graders. Then you see the wall of 11th graders, and then you see the wall of 12th graders. And you ask, why is that wall of 10th graders so big? 9th grade is small because, you know, we have Granger, right, has 9th grade? So that'll be a smaller because you have a bunch of them over there. But then 10th grade's a big class. Well, why does 11th grade just start to collapse? And why does 12th grade get even smaller? Because the 10th grade is the year that this happens. Some of you who are here right now will not be here next year. You'll be in the learning center. God forbid you'll be out of school altogether because you just don't belong here, and you know that. And then some of you will be off in AP classes, and then the rest of you go in regular classes, and that's kind of where that split starts to happen. You know? 10th grade is difficult because you have a bunch of people who just don't belong here, And then you've got people who really should be, challenged a lot. So which one should we focus on? Yeah. Which one should you focus on? Yeah. Because just because you're going in one direction right now as a 10th grader, does that mean that's where you're going to go for the rest of your life? No, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. As you guys know about me, I graduated with a 1.8. So if you had asked my 10th grade teachers which way is he going to go, most of them probably would have said prison. But fortunately, I went a different direction on that. So when is it too late to be different? I don't know. I don't know that it ever is. But I was about to make that stupid statement. I wasn't a great student. Quite the opposite. I was a terrible student in high school. So I kind of have a heart for people who were performing less than what they could be capable of course. I don't know. What do you need to get there? Someone to believe in you, perhaps? I believe in you. I mean that really, not like, I believe in you. No, why? Because some of you are incredibly clever and witty. And that means that there's something inside of you that means intelligence. And if there's intelligence, then that means that there's a way of figuring things out. And if you can figure things out, then that hopefully means that you can see problems before they develop, and you'll realize that getting an education is the thing that's going to save your life. And I mean that quite literally, save your life, not just in some hyperbolic metaphorical sense, but it will save your life. It will retrieve your life from the garbage pail where most people's lives end up, living lives of absolute quiet desperation. But, I mean, you can see it. Let's face it, 95% of people don't. Look around the world, man, 95% of people don't. So, is there a possibility? Yeah, I think so. Some of you are absolutely crappy and just absolute shit students. So was I. So, there's a chance, but I also recognize that most of us don't end up on a good path. It's a very small window of people who do. It's kind of like a community college. People go to community college. What percentage of people who go to community college actually transfer to a 4-year university? It's about 6 to 8%. That's a lot of classes for a very small number of people who are going to be successful. Does that mean we should close them off? I don't know. I went that route. It means it's possible. It's possible. So, if you've been there because you weren't actually the bad person, you have sympathy for people who are accused of being the bad person. If you've been there because you were the bad person, but you've changed, then you have a sympathy for that because there's a possibility of the change. And some of you will wake up one day maybe and say, man, if it's possible for me, it's possible for anybody. That's why I wake up every day and say, I think it's possible for everybody. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Monday, you bunch of losers.